I get the privilege tonight to introduce someone who is doing one of the most marvelous things anybody can ever do, and that's write a book. Amen. And I think of all the books I've read, and I keep thinking, wouldn't I love to write a book? And then I think about the work that goes into it, and the dedication and the correction and everything else, and I think, oh no. So I admire everybody who does write a book, and tonight we have a wonderful woman who's coming forward and is going to tell us all about her books and writing life. And I'm delighted to have you with us.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Wow. Can you guys hear me? Or do I have to holler? Holler? All right. Is the mic on? How about that? Okay, let me just get situated, and then we can talk. Let me look around a little bit. Not that I can see everybody, but let me just put my feet on the ground. So, good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I appreciate it, and it makes me extremely happy to see as many people here that came to hear me. It's always a joy to share my stories and memories, and tonight I'm delighted to talk about something very close to my heart, the legacy of Miss Janie and the stories that shaped my life. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Robert Poole. You've seen him wandering around. He's been helping everybody and watching the door. I'd like to thank him. He's the director of the Jones Performing Arts Center. I'd like to thank him for giving me this opportunity. He was my first contact at Louisburg College. He was also responsible for the publicity I received in the local Franklin Times. That was quite a big surprise to me when one of my friends called. She said, "You made the Franklin Times." I said, "Oh God, okay." He's also responsible for flyers that went around the college that I was told, "Oh, you're in the flyer. I saw your picture in the flyer." I said, "What flyer?" So last week when I met Mr. Poole, he showed me the flyer and gave me a copy. So that made me really happy. The center engages in the community in the enjoyment and preservation of history and culture of the Tar River region. This helps the community understand who we are, where we have been, and how we can build on the past to make a better future. This is such a necessary endeavor considering the world we are currently living in. As I look around, I see familiar faces of friends and family that I've known for more than 50 years, some longer. I want to express my gratitude, my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for being here to support me during this, one of my most proudest moments. When I reflect on my life, the idea of writing a book, let alone two, was never something I imagined. To be honest, my English class in high school was one of my least favorite subjects. I dreaded anything related to writing papers or the class itself. Surprising, right? I began writing this speech while watching the televised funeral of our former president, Jimmy Carter. The coverage highlighted what a humble and down-to-earth man he was. I hope that one day I can be remembered in the same way. I'm just a small-town girl who has never forgotten my roots right here in Louisburg. Tonight, however, is all about a woman named Janie Willie Nicholson Jones, my maternal grandmother and great-grandmother to many of you in this room. I will share my book tonight, which is a collection of stories about her, along with some of the memories we shared together. I want to thank everyone who has already purchased the book, read it, and provided me with feedback. Your support means a lot to me. When I was told I'd have 45 minutes to speak with you and discuss my book, I initially thought, what in the world am I going to talk about for 45 minutes? But my friends, some of them told me I shouldn't worry about it, that I had that part covered. Many of you know I've never been shy about talking. So for those of you who don't know me, let me begin by sharing a little bit about my life, even though tonight is truly about Miss Janie. Yes, I grew up in Louisburg and attended elementary and high school at Riverside. I started at Franklin County Training School in mid third grade, which was called back then Franklin County Training School. By the time I reached fifth grade, the school's name changed to Riverside Union School. I graduated in 1967 and went on to continue my education at North Carolina Central University in Durham, where I currently live. I'm the proud parent of 2 children and 2 grandchildren, all of whom live near me in Durham, except for one granddaughter in New Jersey. I kind of think a couple of them are with me tonight, but I won't call them out. I moved to New York City to pursue opportunities I couldn't find in North Carolina at that time. Over the years, I've lived in all 5 boroughs except Staten Island, as well as the Bronx, Middletown, New York, Nutley, and East Orange, New Jersey. I also spent 2 years abroad in England, in Newmarket, a city called Newmarket. I've had the privilege of working extensively in New York City and New Jersey for a variety of companies, including CBS, Exxon, Gray Line Bus Tours, and a particularly exciting company called Don King Productions, which was owned and operated by the famous boxing promoter. Yes, some of you know exactly who I'm talking about. That was indeed an exciting job. I also worked at Children's Specialized Hospital in New Jersey in the Human Resources Department, where I retired in 2012, and later at the American Board of Pediatrics in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I retired again in 2020. I am a devout Christian and have had the privilege of serving in nearly every role within the church you can think of. If you join the church, they'll put you to work. However, for at least the past 25 years, I've been and continue to be a choir member. Perhaps that's where the mention of musician in the newspaper article comes from. I might be considered a vocal musician, but I don't play any instruments, just to be clear. I leave the instrument playing to some other people I know. So enough about me. Let's switch gears and talk about my books. That's why you're here, right? After some life experiences and lessons, I learned to write as a way to express myself. My love for writing began with writing notes to people when they rubbed me the wrong way. It was easy to say what I needed to say, uninterrupted, and people will read what you write to them. Later, when a family member passed away, I would sit down and write about some of the memories and experiences we shared, and then read those stories during the reflection time at the funeral. People started asking me before the service, "You have a story? You got a story? You write something today? You gonna read?" So this continued right up until my mother's passing. When she was very sick and I knew our time together was short, I would come home from visiting her and sit down and write in a journal. Writing helped me release all the emotions I was feeling without burdening others. After she left me, I decided that the journal would become my first book. It's not about you, it's about me. I had always said, I'm going to write and publish a book one day. What better way to honor my mother and fulfill a lifelong dream than this? This book, as many have told me, is one that anyone could sign their name to. It's a bit heavy in content and has even been used by several ministers as a grief tool. That brings me joy knowing that my pain can offer relief to someone going through the same experience. This book was the original journal, capturing the last 3 months of life between a mother, a daughter, and a stepfather living with her cancer, each with their own experiences. I was recently interviewed on a streaming radio service, WDRB Media Radio, and discussed some of the issues related to taking care of elderly parents. My mother's illness fell into that category, so I was able to share the information about my books there. In our family, we have a ladies' book club. We read whatever book we want and give a recap of it to the group. But sometimes, instead of discussing a book I'd read, they'd ask me to tell one of the Miss Janie stories. And that's how the idea for my second book, A Glimpse of Miss Janie, came to life. You see, I lived with Miss Janie from the time I was about 6 months old until I turned 17, right here and around Louisburg. Over those years, I not only heard her stories and also experienced many of them firsthand. There are some other worthwhile mentions about Miss Janie that won't be found in the book. She was a native of Louisburg for as long as I can remember, living just down Highway 561 until she went home to be with the Lord. She started her life in Warren County in the Embro area. She was one of 13 children. Her father was born into slavery, which ended when he was 6 years old. He was all about generational wealth and education, leaving each of his 13 children 1 acre of land each when he died. Miss Janie went to school locally in a one-room schoolhouse until she was about the equivalent of 8th grade, after which her father sent her to boarding school. Not one of those prestigious schools where the kids are privileged. That's another story for the third book. At any rate, Miss Janie married at the age of 21, and to that union she had 16 children of her own. 3 of her children died early in life, and 13 survived. I guess 13 was her lucky number. In addition to her own, she raised 2 of her granddaughters. You guessed it, I was one of those 2. She was a strong woman of God. Her belief was that you treated people the way you wanted to be treated, no matter your race, creed, or color. But if you came at her wrong, be prepared to be set straight. She lived to the ripe young age of 89 with very few illnesses. To my knowledge, she had 2 heart attacks and survived both, recovering and moving on with life. So I want to take a minute right here and ask for a little audience participation. I can't see y'all really well right from this standpoint, but well enough. So I want to ask anyone who is not family who knew Miss Janie at any point in your life to raise your hand. Keep your hand up so I can see who I'm looking at. That's remarkable. Okay, so any family members here tonight who actually knew Miss Janie at any point of your life, raise your hand. So if you're family and you knew her, raise your hand. Okay. So any family present here tonight who never met her, any family who never met her. Wow. Oh, okay. Thank you for your participation. That's all that's required tonight. I wasn't going to ask you to do jumping jacks or anything like that. It just shows me how important it is for me to keep writing and sharing her with the world. Some of the stories in the book might make you laugh, while others might make you think. For instance, the cross burning, a story regarding an actual experience of such a frightful thing, make you think. The wrong water jar, a story about a mistaken jar containing a form of poison given to me to drink, thinking it was water. Thankfully, I can still speak. That make you think too. And gun control, a real lesson on gun safety. That's a whole nother story. You'll like it. But the most famous story is the snake bite. Miss Janie was bitten by a snake, a moccasin, when she was about 13 years old. Back in the day, you died if you didn't receive medical attention quickly. Obviously, she didn't die, but the cure was almost as much to make you want to die. I wouldn't try that method in today's time. If you've been bitten by a snake, go to the nearest hospital. Now, I'm not going to spoil the story for you, so you'll have to read the book to find out what happened to her. One story, though, I'd like to highlight tonight is A Change is Coming, which reflects Miss Janie's courage as she faced the sudden loss of her husband of 50 years in 1958. This story gives me an opportunity to talk about Mr. Blair Jones, who was her husband, or as we affectionately called him, Papa, Grandpa Jones, and even one of my cousins told me the other day, they called him Granddaddy Papa Jones. I don't know where they got that from. She tried to explain. He was from Louisburg and a descendant of a Confederate Colonel, Jordan Francis Jones. According to census records, Colonel Jones was my great-great-grandfather. He was a slave owner who lived near the Laurel Mill area and owned several mills, including a grist mill, currently known as Laurel Mill. Also, a water-powered sawmill and cotton mill situated along Sandy Creek. I think the mill has been renovated and there may be tours available. I don't have information on that. One remarkable thing about the Colonel was his decision to sell an acre of land to his slaves for $1, which would enable them to build a place of worship of their own. That place of worship was Jones Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. It was originally built as a one-room log cabin, but it's far from that now. According to church records, the church was established on August 12, 1873. The old plantation home of Colonel Jones is located just down the road from the church. It isn't visible from the road now, but was open to our family for a tour back in the 80s. Years later, riding around the area and showing young family members these historical places, which we have now called the Louisburg tour. Oh, Audrey, can you take us on a Louisburg tour? We want to go see all the old things. So that's what we call it. But there was a woman who I believe currently lives there who came to the mailbox just at the time we had stopped to try and get a look at this site. She was quite eccentric in her outward appearance, but stopped and talked to us. She remembered her mother giving us permission to tour the house back then. It was quite a coincidental experience for us. Jones Chapel was one of my family's churches of attendance in the community. Grandpa Blair was the first member of our family buried there, and today, 17 family members rest along with him at the church. Our other family church was Nelson Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. That was Grandma's church. I became a member at the age of 13. You can read all about that journey in the story, The Mourner's Bench. When I first wrote and published A Glimpse of Miss Janie, my goal was simple: to preserve these stories for family members who were too young to have met Miss Janie or Grandpapa. I didn't want these pieces of our family history to be lost or forgotten. I resolved not to carry these stories with me when my time here is done. I'm also excited to share that I am currently working on 2 new books. One is called Love Forgot to Say Goodbye, a completely different genre and a work of fiction. Let me say that again, a work of fiction. The other is another book about Miss Janie, although I haven't settled on a title as of yet. You can stay connected to me on Facebook and Instagram, where I post daily short stories called The View from the Window. These little reflections are inspired by whatever I see out the window while enjoying my morning coffee. My daughter says I'm just being a nosy old lady. I'd like to share some updates. I'm working on making my books available on Amazon so that ordering for yourself or as a gift will be much easier. For tonight, I do have several copies of A Glimpse of Miss Janie available for purchase if you'd like to take one home. I also have a very few of It's Not About You, It's About Me. It's also for purchase. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. It's been an honor to share a little piece of Miss Janie's world with you. I hope these stories touch your heart as much as they've been a part of mine. And I think I've said quite enough about myself and the books at this point, and I'm open to any questions that anybody might have, and hopefully I can answer them. Any questions?
Over here in the corner.
Okay.
So as a young lady growing up in Louisburg and then going off and experiencing this huge world around you, be it New York or England or whatever it might be, how do you think those experiences colored the way you write, that perhaps if you had not gone to those places, you might have written it differently?
Good question. It colored it because it made me aware of other worlds and other experiences and other people and things that were new to me. And I kind of write about things that are new, and I write about experiences of meeting people. My daughter says that I can get a person's family history and everything in 15 minutes. When I go to the grocery store and I talk to everybody. I talk everywhere I go. So going to New York was an eye-opener. It was a new life and a new way of life, and it opened my eyes to other things. Any other questions? Oh, did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Y'all ain't got no questions. I can't see. Who is that? Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to ask about your publication process.
Can you repeat the question?
He wants to know my publication process. How did I go about publishing my books? I self-published. Amazon will take your money. All the places will take your money, but for me, I wanted to get it done. I wanted to see it. I wanted it in my hand. So I found a place called 48 Hour Books, and they will publish. You can go online. There's a place that you can drop all your information in, and as you drop your information in, they drop the price as you go. So you can spend as much money as you want to or as little as you want. And they will give you, once you approve your book, they give you to approve. And once you do, they'll have your books to your door in 48 hours. And you can reorder the same way, or you can revise it and reorder. But that was the method I went. Anybody else? Okay, right here in the front.
So, just to spark up the conversation a little bit, how did growing up with Grandma, an old soul, change, or how would you say growing up with Grandma was different than the experiences that you had when you visited, say when you came to visit with us? Like, for instance, you never learned how to ride a bicycle. Little things like that.
Okay, so
growing up with an older person versus some of the things that might be different.
growing up with an older person was quite different. Your grandma, my grandma, she raised me like she raised her children. I think she thought it was 1930 something because I couldn't do certain things. I couldn't, as you say, I never learned to ride a bike because she thought riding a bike, something would happen and I would hurt myself. And she was responsible for me. So she didn't want me hurting myself, even though I fell off of the neighbor's bike into the briars, into a ditch with briars, and I couldn't get out the ditch, and the kids would way down the road and they couldn't see me. So finally they were like, what's taking her so long with that ride? So they came to get me, but Grandma picked briars out of my head and my arms and my legs and everywhere. So she didn't let me do that. I couldn't be out at night because I wanted to sing in the choir, and the neighbor would take me to church to be with the choir, but she said, no, you can't be out at night. You're supposed to be in the house. I couldn't date. And I got in a big argument with her once about dating because I was friends or had a boyfriend who was in the basketball team of the neighboring school, and I wanted to go to the basketball game because he was popular and all the girls wanted him, and I was like, I need to be at school. And so Grandma was like, you can't go to the game. And I said, but I want to go. And I was so annoyed with her, I called my mother and I said, Mommy, she won't let me go to the game. And she says, put Mama on the phone. So Mama got on the phone with Mother and they talked. And so she handed the phone back to me. So my mother said, I told Mama to let you go. I said, oh, okay. So I hung up and I said, I can go? So Grandma says, well, your mother told you could go. She says, I didn't tell you could go. I said, but Mommy said I could go. She says, well, if you want to go, she says, you go right ahead. I said, she says, you go ahead. She says, but if anything happens to you, I want you to call your mother. Don't call me. Now, it was perfectly fine because Miss Carnell, who was our mentor, would pick us all the girls up, take us all to the basketball game, stay with us at the game, and then take us all home. So what was the problem? But I want to tell you, I went to that game, but I was a nervous wreck. It's like, please, God, let me get home. Don't let nothing happen to me because I can't call Grandma. So living with Grandma was quite... it was quite different, and when coming to live with you guys or stay for the summer or the visits, that was quite different because we got to do things, we got to go places. Staying with my cousin Gerald, we got to do things and go places. So it was different, and it was restrictive to me. And then, of course, the older I got, the worse it felt, and I just couldn't do things. So, yeah. Yes.
I knew Miss Janie, of course. What was your favorite dish that she cooked?
A blackberry dumpling. Okay. Yeah, blackberries, right? I fell into blackberries and I loved blackberries and I still love blackberries, but Grandma used to make a dumpling. She somehow or another would put it in the dough and she would put it in a pot and boil it, and she'd take it out and put it in this pan, and she would sprinkle it with sugar and nutmeg and cinnamon and butter. And that thing would stay in the oven for it seemed like an eternity. But once it came out, it was really good. So that was one of my favorite things that she made.
I would like to bring back a memory to you. You say she was very strict with you. And as you and I talked shouting partners, or what we call shouting partners. But I would like to know, if she was that strict with you, how did you manage to become this dynamic, powerful majorette with this little short skirt on, marching up and down Main Street in the parade? I don't understand if she was that strict.
Well,
And you were cute too, by the way.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so there's a story behind that too. I was able to become a majorette because my mother said, you have to let her do some things. You cannot shelter her. You have to let her do something in school. So I could be in the choral group at school, and I could be in the band. But the key was, some of you know Mr. Green, Mr. Harold Green. The key was that Mr. Green would bring me home from band practice, and if the band went any place, Mr. Green went too. And so Mr. Green was the chaperone, and so I got to be a majorette because Mr. Green watched out. And boy, did he watch out. He did. So my mother was instrumental from a distance about some things. I also got to be a debutante when I was 16, and your cousin was the person who could take me and bring me to the rehearsals and what have you, and only because it was your cousin, and you know, yeah. Okay.
It's me.
Oh, Jackie, okay.
Okay. Don't want to stand up, but maybe I just have to shout it out. The other day, a few days ago, you and I had a conversation about our mutual grandmother. She was my grandmother also, okay? I did not know her well. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even say that I grew up with her, and I did not. I grew up in another town, which was about 18 miles away, which was Henderson. But anyway, that's not the story now. There's a story I want you to tell about Grandma Jones, you and the sweeping the hallway.
Oh, dear God.
Where she was.
Okay.
These are things that I learned from Audrey.
Okay. The story that she's referring to is a time that I got into a fight in school. I was a very timid child. I didn't want to bother anybody, and I didn't want anybody bothering me. And I was scared to death that anybody that was bigger than me that looked at me the wrong way. And there was a girl in the class who was a bully, and she bullied me every day. And I did not retaliate. I stayed out of her way just as far as I could get. If we had a class together, if we passed in the hallway, I went that way and she went the other way. And so we had a class together, and she decided this day she was going to pick on me. And so just as the teacher had been called out of the class to the office, and we were left unsupervised. And so this particular day, when the bell rang, she decided, well, I'm going to hit you today. So she hit me with a ruler. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I got to get out of this room. And of course, when the bell rings, people do this. And I tried to get away from her, and she was still coming in my direction. So in the corner of the room was an old broom. We had to do our own custodian care, and so there was an old broom. And I picked up the broom, and I said, look, I'm going to hit you with this broom. And she's like, yeah, well, I'm going to, you up. I said, okay. So she came in my direction, I hit her, and she stumbled back, and she said, I'm really going to mess you up. I was like, oh, God. So I said, I'm going to hit you again. So indeed, I tried to hit her again, and at that point, the boys in the class decided, we're going to break this up. So they kept her over there, and I said, I'm gone to the room. So I went to my homeroom, and as soon as I got to my homeroom, I heard my name, Battle, and so-and-so, come to the office. I said, oh, God. So I go to the office, and Mr. Harris, he says, Battle, and you guys like to fight? You're going home. You're suspended for 2 weeks. I said, oh, my God, 2 weeks. So, okay, so I had no choice. I went home. I said, Grandma, I got suspended from school today. And she's like, for what? I said, well, you remember that girl I told you about that always bullies me? I said, well, she hit me, and I tried to fight back. I said, we got in trouble, and we got called to the office. I said, Mr. Harris said I had to sweep the halls for 2 weeks. She says, all right. She went in her bedroom. She picked up the phone. She called Mr. Harris on the phone. 5 o'clock, messed up his dinner. And she said, listen, she said, I've heard problems about this. I've heard Audrey tell me about this girl, and I'm going to send her back to school tomorrow. So he says, all right, have a report to the office. So back to school I went the next day, reported to the office. And he said, okay, Battle. He said, you like to fight? You like to fight with a broom? Here's a broom. You're going to sweep the halls for the next 2 weeks. I said, okay, what you gonna do? You're in school, you rode the school bus, you can't go home, you can't call home, you can't do nothing. So I swept the halls all day. Everybody passing by, looking and walking, you sweeping the halls, you know. So I go home and I said, Grandma, I said, I had to sweep the halls today. I said, and I have to sweep the halls for the next 2 weeks. She says, why? I said, that's my punishment. I said, he told me if I'd like to fight with a broom, then I had to sweep with a broom. She says, I'll take you to school in the morning. So now my grandmother didn't drive and we didn't have a car. And so she called our neighbor, and our neighbor had to interrupt his farming to take us to school that morning. So we got to school, and of course students driving buses and teachers, and it was a melee in the office. And so Grandma walked in, she walked right up to the secretary's desk and she says, I'd like to see Mr. Harris for a few minutes. And she says, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Jones, but he's really busy right now. She says, well, I'm very busy as well, and I'd like to see him now. And she looked at Grandma and she says, oh, just a minute. And so she went back to the office, and the next thing Mr. Harris came bustling out there, and he said, hey, Miss Jones, how you doing? She said, I'm very well, thank you. She said, I'd like to have a word with you. Come right on in. Into the office they went and shut the door, and I was standing there. And in 2 minutes, that door opened up, and they both came out. And she says, you have a nice day. He says, thank you, Miss Jones. He said, Battle, go to class. I said, go to class. I said, okay. I went to class. Man, I couldn't wait to get home. I was like, what in the world? So I get home. I said, Grandma, I said, what did you say? She says, you don't worry about what I said. She says, you went to class, right? I said, yes, ma'am. She says, well, that's all you need to know. I said, okay. So years later, discussing old school, because my aunts and uncles all went to the same school, they had the same principals, and had some of my same teachers. And so years later, discussing this, I said, I would give anything to know what Grandma told him. My mother said, I know what Mama told him. I said, well, what did she tell him? She said, she told him if he didn't put you back in class, her next stop would be the superintendent's office. I said, oh. So, Grandma was gone by that time, but I finally did learn what happened. So that's the story. What? What is it?
She said.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. She did say, she said she told him if she wanted her girls to learn how to be maids, she could teach them how to do that at home. That was one of the key things that she did say about that. But that was what my mother told me. Yes, cousin?
Dear cousin, you alluded to your visits with us in New Jersey.
Yes.
But I noticed in reading your works, you left a little part out concerning your visit, one of your visits to New Jersey.
The most notable visit?
The most notable.
Do you really want me to tell that? Oh, God. Well, we're really going to need him. You sure you want me to tell that story?
You were scared to death.
It was your fault.
I had nothing to do with the story.
The story is that we went to jail together. Okay. So, I guess, what were we, like 13, 15, 14, something like that? So we went to visit, you already know this. So anyway, I went to visit my cousin and his brother, and we were young teenagers, and it was his brother's girlfriend's birthday. And we wanted to go down to the local soda fountain to just have, soda or something. This was in New Jersey, so, we had a soda fountain to go to. So we said, okay, so Grandma didn't want me to go with the kids, and so my aunt said, Mama, let her go because the rest of the kids are going, she should go too. So off I went with these New Jersey kids. And we were walking down the street, and kids will be kids, and there were two Caucasian young girls walking in front of us. And one of the guys in the group decided to heckle them. I mean, really heckled them and really scared them. And I was like, what is wrong with y'all? Why are you messing with these girls? Please. So at any rate, the girls went into a drugstore and called the police. And so we continued down to the soda fountain, and we ordered food and was sitting there. At least he ordered food. And as we sat there, the police came in, and they were looking for the person in our group that had heckled them because the girls heard his name and told and they said it was Rocky, and so they were looking for Rocky, and of course my cousin was having a meal and he didn't want to get up and leave his meal, and so I convinced him that that was the thing to do, because when the police tell you to do something, that's what you're supposed to do, so get off of that stool and come on, we gotta go. So it took us all down to the local police department, and I thought, I'm just gonna die now. I'm gonna be arrested. I'm just gonna die. So they separated the girls from the boys. Well, here I am now, separated from my cousins, and I'm in with these other girls, and it's like, I don't really know them well either, but Uncle Nelson came to get us. And so he came and got us, and so when he got us in the car, he was hot. I had never seen Uncle Nelson as mad as he was. He was red around his ears. He was just like, fuming. And so he said, now listen, he said, we're going back to the house and we're not going to say a word about this to Mama. He says, but boys, when she leaves, I got something to talk to y'all about. So indeed, my grandmother never knew that I went to jail. And we never got a record. It was considered childish mischief, I suppose. And we were wise not to do that again, weren't we? And he's the wrong water jar kid who gave me the poison to drink. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to say my stories aren't like that.
We love each other, our family, we do. We've always loved each other ever since we were children, and we all played together. He's like my brother, she's like my sister. My mentor cousin up there who helped me get my first job when I went to New York. So, yeah. So anybody else got any other questions?
What other stories are you concealing?
What stories am I concealing? I'll never tell. I'll never tell in anybody's book either. There's some things you take to the grave with you.
They've gone to the grave already.
You have a question over there?
Ah, yes, ma'am.
What was the best advice she ever gave you?
The best advice she gave me, if you don't tell anybody your business, they can't tell your business. If you keep your business to yourself, no one else can tell it.
That's solid advice.
Yeah, that was the best piece of advice she ever gave me. And it was in some circumstances, but yeah, that was it. She said, if you keep your business to yourself, you don't have to worry about anybody else telling your business. So, that's the best piece of advice. Pamela's father gave me a piece of advice. When I was young and going to England, I mentioned that I lived in England. I moved to England when I was 20. I got married and I moved there, and I was agonizing about going. Should I go? That's England. Like, oh God, that's so far. So I said to my uncle, I said, oh my God, I said, what if I don't like it? He says, the plane comes back. It was so simple. I was like, oh, yes, the plane comes back. Yeah. So,
How did you like it?
what is it?
How did you like living in London?
Well, I lived in Newmarket, which was 60 miles north of London. It was an experience that I'm happy that I had. My first child was born in England. Yes, I became pregnant and had a child by myself in a foreign country. But it was an experience. It was cold. I didn't like the weather. It never got over 86 degrees in the summertime. Okay. So if that's all the questions everybody has, or anybody have any other questions?
I just want to give you a round of applause.
Thank you. I did see one hand raised for the question.
I just wondered what it was like to come from Louisburg to New York, emotionally. I mean, just...
Man, let me tell you. From Louisburg to New York City, Manhattan, it's like I was green as grass. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to get from point A to point B. But my cousin up there, who raised the question and asked me to tell that story, she took me under her wing. And she schooled me on New York and things to do and things not to do. She got me my first job when I got there. Funny story with that, really quick funny story. She told me, she says, I want you, meet me, because she was going to give me a job at the company she was at. And she said, meet me on the train. You take the train, you get on the B train, I think it was, and go to 42nd Street and get off and wait for me. Wait on the platform and I'll come and get you. I said, okay. I went downstairs, I looked up to saw the train coming, I got on the train, I went to 42nd Street, I got off, and I stood there on the platform and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And I was like, wow, I don't see her. I don't know where she is. Well, I came out and I think I called her on the phone. And she said, what train did you get on? I said, you told me to get on the train. She said, I told you to get on the B train. I said, oh, so I got on the C train, which B and C trains went like that. I ended up on 42nd Street, but like 3 or 4 blocks away. So she said, go upstairs and get in a cab and come to the office. So I go upstairs, taxi, I get in, I tell him where I want to go. And he said, what? Where do you want to go? So I told him, he said, okay. He drove me 3 minutes around the block and let me out. I had no idea it was only like 2 blocks away. So it was a big difference. So yes. Kids, anything else y'all want to learn tonight? I like my daughter and my granddaughter to raise their hand. Those are my children. And I do really, really appreciate all of you for coming tonight and being with me. I really appreciate it.
We thank you very much.
So now I got some books out there if you want to buy some books.